What's going on, ladies and gentle people? Welcome to another first time gameplay video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than most of my first time gameplay videos, but we're actually going to take a look at the new Dust2 that has come out on Counter-Strike Global Offensive. So we're going to start from CT spawn, work our way into bomb site A, bomb site B from the CT side, and then we will then switch over to the T side and talk about the T side and what has changed there. So first and foremost, when I first loaded up the game side by side of the old Dust2 and the new Dust2, the first thing I noticed right off the bat, just standing here in the corner of CT spawn looking directly towards mid there, this is not the same angle anymore. So when I looked at this map kind of just roaming around, the field of view felt different to me. It felt like walls were shifted around in ways. Looking at it, if you notice this wall here in the mid area, it's been extended just a little bit. It'll be interesting to see what differences that causes. Not a huge deal. If you're standing right here, you can kind of peek this crack and you would see their feet first from the bottom of that ledge there. So kind of an interesting angle. I don't know. The second thing I noticed that was different here in the CT spawn here, they actually changed this box around. So originally, the way I knew, you have to get up from the left side of this box, jump onto these little black handles, and then get up here this way. That is not the same anymore in the new map. So you won't be able to do that on these boxes, but they actually placed a pallet here that you can actually jump up onto. So now here's what's interesting about this pallet. You can actually stay right on the pallet and peek into the mid area. So maybe if it's a mid to B rush, you could possibly play it from right here and you have a little bit better coverage and you're able to get down quickly. Obviously your position is then given up very fast, but it could work if you're trying to get some good picks on a mid to B rush. It also makes it easier for counter-terrorists to use this angle. So expect this angle probably get used quite more often because it's a lot easier to access. I feel like on the old one you were a little bit exposed to the mid to B area there, so if you didn't have anyone covering your mid there, you get a little nervous trying to get up there quickly, and it's hard to get up and down quickly. So on the new one it's a lot easier, a lot quicker. So it'll be interesting to see how this changes things competitively. Moving along though, the A ramp here from CT spawn doesn't look like much has changed. They did add that stairway there on the side. I don't see much of a difference. Personally, in my opinion, I don't think that's going to change much in gameplay. So this was probably the most interesting change that has grabbed my attention on this map so far. It's definitely one of my top hitters. We'll actually talk about some of the detail here. So what you'll notice first, there's definitely some added depth to the to this map in general. The sky drop, the backdrop, skyline, whatever you want to call it, all that is deeper. So there's added depth to this map to make it feel fuller. So you definitely feel a lot smaller now in this new map. But what you will notice is how they changed. They got rid of the two vehicles on long and replaced it with just one vehicle that has solid windows. Something important there. If we take a look here from the old Dust2, some players would play right here from behind this car on fire and try to use the fire for a little bit of a camouflage. Very common to play this corner here. It was okay for maybe these over the top peaks a little bit, but I wasn't ever a huge fan of this corner. When we look at this angle on the new version here, this car is solid. So as a counter-terrorist, you could play from right here and pick off onto long just by remembering to look towards the B pillar on this car. So that's that center frame. If you're aiming towards the B pillar and you peek up, you would be right there on long. So this will be an interesting angle that'll be new, considering that the car is solid, so it adds some extra protection there. And the car, you can penetrate the car with bullets. This is a new angle, so we'll see how that plays out there with the long car. Again, I do not like this corner. I feel this corner is very bad corner. But moving along here, if we look at the A ramp here, A ramp hasn't changed a whole lot. They did make two subtle changes though on A ramp. One is this box is a little bit more narrow. You feel a little bit more exposed when you're crouched behind this box. It does not feel as great of a coverage as it did on the old Dust2. So you'll notice here, you just feel more exposed in general. They also changed the barrels here on the A ramp. These barrels are no longer barrels, as you can see, and they've also widened them a little bit. So if you're trying to crouch behind these barrels, or in this case, sacks of grain, you're not going to have a very good positioning here. You're pretty exposed on long from your entire body. So I don't know, it feels like this might be less played now on the new version. Goose itself hasn't really had any changes, just mainly just design changes. On A plat itself, everything on A plat looks pretty much the same. They did add 3 sacks of grain here for this coverage here. I never really played this position, but it might feel a little different now instead of 2 barrels, but I don't think it really changes much otherwise. Now, what I did notice, they added an extra box here, so you have a little bit, I guess, a little bit of walking room without falling off easily. Whereas in the old one, it was just 1 box, so you're a little bit more constricted on movement here. Slightly different on that sense, especially since your shoulder is kind of covered up on this catwalk peak here. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because, you know, obviously here you're fully exposed, whereas here you've got a little bit of added coverage. So very interesting change there. Ninja itself has not really changed, but they did change this wall in the corner over here. So I don't know what this is technically called in this corner, but this corner now, you are a little bit more exposed on catwalk if you're playing from this angle. Moving along over to cat here, they did get rid of this doorway here with those awkward pillars. I thought this door was annoying, so I'm kind of glad to see it gone. I feel like it'll just provide your, you know, easier movement for CT side in this area without running into those. I never really used them for coverage. I felt that they were just too exposed and too close to cat in general. The box here, mainly just design changes, not really much difference there. If we move over to the cat stairway here, this is interesting. So this did change a little bit. So you're a little bit more exposed. Short stairs, you don't have that great coverage anymore like on the old Dust2. So it'll be interesting to see. You can obviously still play this, especially if you're crouched, and kind of peek up a little bit. So it just changes the way this corner will be played. And again, they got rid of that doorway there. I thought that was a great removal as well, because now if you're peeking out here, I would always get worried that I was going to get nailed from lower. So a lot of the times I would like to hug this area so that I could get coverage out into mid. Problem was, on the old one, you would run into these because they were there. So you could peek here, but you were still exposed to that lower there from the crevice of that arch. So this will be interesting to see how this plays. I think this will add a little bit of different gameplay here in this corner. If we look down towards top mid, there are some actual interesting changes here. So off the bat, what I notice is that that pole is not in the same position anymore. So instead of it being in between the 2 barrels, they actually moved it over to the right of the barrels. I think that's going to add some slight different angle for oppers, as far as, you know, peeking down this mid area with this change of angle. If that's a big deal, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't often play mid with ops, so I'm not sure. I'm actually going to move into mid now and take a look at mid here. For the most part, I don't think much has changed in this sense. I mean, you're still peaking the same way down mid. I don't really see much of a difference there. The only difference I see is, you know, mainly straight corners instead of curved corners. So this little corner here is kind of an interesting little cubby. It's a little bit more, you feel a little more secure, a little bit more tight within it, whereas this was a little bit more exposed from both sides. So it'll be interesting to see how this changes out, you know, playing the mid area here. There's a lot of changes to just the field of view or the angle. So you can see here where this again feels a little bit more secure to your shoulder in this corner here. It's interesting how they've changed some of that feel where I feel like players are not going to play these angles the same way anymore. They replaced the Hummer with a truck. I don't know if there's much difference there besides that. I think at this rate it's all aesthetic. I don't think you can boost up into any of these areas. I'm assuming this area is all blocked off. And if we take a look at the corner here, we can see how, again, just a little bit added coverage. Most changes here are just subtle changes. A little bit extra coverage on the new way that they've changed some of these angles here in this mid area. You're a little bit less exposed into CT spawn there. I guess you're peeking towards long there to try to go for a pick. This is an interesting change. I think this might change how this is played a little bit if you're trying to hide up here. Here, the exposure happened, it feels like on the old Dust2 you were exposed a little bit sooner, a little bit quicker, whereas on this new setup you can kind of hide in this corner and it can be very interesting. Normally what I like to do now is if I hide in this corner, I will sit here and then I will actually bank a grenade off this wall. A lot of the times that gives the perception off that the smoke was thrown from the window outside, so it can potentially save your life if you're playing right here and trying to go for some picks out into that mid area. It feels like the window to get into B has changed a little bit. It feels less narrow now, maybe a little bit easier to throw nades through it. I don't know, we'll have to see how that pans out, but it does look a little bit more open than the old version. If we look at going into B through the B doors here, not much difference here, not much difference at all. It looks like this angle is pretty much for the most part pretty consistent with the old one, so I don't think we'll see much difference there. Again, I think at this rate what we're seeing is mostly changes in field of view more so than anything else. I don't feel like much has changed here besides textures, some redesign, and the field of view just feeling slightly different. Now this stack that's in the corner here of bomb site B, it feels a little bit more secure considering the fact that when you crouch on the new one, the boxes actually cover all the way up to the top ledge of B here. Whereas on the old one, it does not. You can see that whole top ledge there. So from window, you feel a little bit more exposed from window, whereas in the new one, you feel a little less exposed from window. So I'm not sure how it looks from the other side. If your head still shows a little bit from window when you're crouched here, I don't know. Not much has changed for bomb site B. For the most part, everything looks pretty much the same, just a few different, you know, redesigns, but nothing that's going to change gameplay. Everything here is the same. The only difference here are just the redesign of textures. They did also change sounds, so we'll have to get used to the new sounds. This back of bomb site B platform in bomb site B, I don't see any differences. It looks like for this angle, these are pretty much the same angles. What I do find interesting though is you will obviously notice that the arches for the tunnel are taller. They did raise the height of the archway on the tunnel here, so I think this is going to allow better nades from T side into bomb site B. Just some added space there, maybe even someone who's boosting. If there's a smoke in between this tunnel here, you could have a teammate on T side boost you and maybe get a clever pick right above the smoke. Other than that, everything else seems to be pretty much the same in B. Not a lot of changes in B. It looks like B was left alone for the most part. We move our way into tunnel. There's definitely some interesting changes here in tunnel. It does not feel the same because of the added height. So again, you feel smaller on this newer version of the map. The angles for the most part with the pillars are fairly the same. They did change this pillar right here. So you'll notice this pillar is moved over to the right a little bit, so you can't see that right side corner here of the pillar as easily. You have to kind of walk in a little bit deeper into tunnel. You're a little bit more exposed if you're going to fall back into B, whereas on this one, a lot of times you could play right here, peek right through that crack and see as they're passing through, so you could get your shot ready on the left side of the pillar. I don't think that's going to be as easy anymore from that angle. Another common play for me would be right on this pillar here. I would hug this pillar, but it looks like that hasn't changed any. With the straight edges as opposed to the curved edges, doesn't look like it makes any difference to this angle. The crate is pretty much the same. Now, the other big difference that I do see in tunnel is that the shadows seem a little bit deeper, so it seems like it's a little darker here in the tunnels now, since the lighting is actually coming from above, so it's kind of peeking in, whereas on the old one they had this perception of light coming through the windows. The shadows are a little bit deeper here in tunnel. Looking at the stairways, not much difference there. The peak on the top of this box, for the most part, you might be able to see a little bit more of their body than on the old one. The old one, I think you just kind of see their head peek out. Not even that, if they were way back there, you'd have to kind of jump up a little bit to get a little bit better angle. So looks like a little bit more exposure, but it could just be more so just a redesign. But I think they brought that ledge of that wall down just a hair. I could be wrong, but that's the perception I feel or see at this angle. It looks like this angle is still pretty consistent. Now if you're playing in this corner here, you're going to feel a little bit more secure on the lower tunnel. If you're hiding behind this corner here from a mid-rush or something, you'll notice how the doorways are a lot less exposed on the new version, as opposed to the old version. You're exposed quite a bit more in mid. And again, they removed this pillar here. So now with that pillar gone, it feels a little different because you either had to be on the right side of this pillar or you had to stand in front of it and you were exposed more so to cat. You'll notice how cat is a little less exposed now that they've redesigned this corner here. But anyway, we're just talking about very subtle changes on this entire map. But again, it's just very subtle changes that I feel changes gameplay angles depending what corners you're playing from. I think this it feels like Xbox is a little bit easier accessed now. Maybe not. Now that they've added this palette here, it seems like it's a little bit of a different accomplishment to jump up there. I'm not sure, maybe you can, I don't think you can jump this anymore. Yeah, you can't jump this in one leap right to the top. So now you kind of have to use the pallet in order to climb up there. So that pallet's kind of unnecessary. I guess you could possibly look at the wall as you're jumping up here to get up here, especially if you know that you're clear from mid. Mid's kind of covered up fairly well with the door there, so you can probably sneak up here quickly, but it just does not feel the same. I mean, originally I used to jump up here as this way. I felt like you were a little bit safer as terrorists doing this play. It seems a little bit more exposed now with this little ledge here that you have to jump up on. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the CT side. Looking at bomb site A, B, and the mid area there, those are the main changes that we see overall. My 1 hour of gameplay has run out, so I have to do an MP restart game. Alright, so now we're going to do this from the T side and look at the changes from T side. So right off the bat, perception has changed quite a bit when we look at out into the distance here. I don't know. This feels, on the new version, it feels a lot deeper. If you notice this fenced area here, just it seems more detailed and it seems to go out there a lot further than on the old version. This was a little bit more snugged. Seemed a little bit shorter. I don't know, the depth perception just does not feel the same to me, but it could just be the way they redesigned the road to curve and whatnot. But nonetheless, I'm just blabbering about random details at this point. In this corner here by this fence, you're actually less exposed now. So originally you felt like your shoulder was exposed here, a little bit more vulnerable, whereas on the new one they now allow you to hide directly behind this wall, so it really covers you up. The boxes have changed quite a bit by this car here that was near outside long door. On these double boxes, you don't have this coverage anymore. I kind of favor that, considering I feel like this allows counter-terrorists to play a little bit more aggressive, especially if it's not an op round and there's no op sitting in T-spawn. Counter-terrorists are probably going to be a little bit more aggressive on the long doors since there's less coverage here for the terrorists. In this corner here, they've added some changes, I don't know, changes to me that don't really matter. You're a little bit safer on this car here outside of long doors. You can crouch behind the car and you're less exposed to the long door. Here's that angle again that we were talking about in mid from the T side though. It feels a little different to me since that pole is not in the same position. But if you look at it from right here, if you're aiming towards mid door there with an op, you're still playing that same position. So even though they moved that pole up a little bit, it doesn't really change much to that angle. The angle itself is still the same when you're directly behind it. So I think it's funny how they did that. I'm not sure what the justification for that was. Suicide is still pretty much the same. The boxes are angled the same there. I don't really see much difference there. They're still inaccessible unless you have a booster. They got rid of these useless poles that always got in the way, so you couldn't jump down there. On T side, technically, you could just, you know, jump straight down there without having to worry about running into those. We go inside long doors here. Let's see if there's, I don't think much has changed here inside long doors. The depth of it feels different because of the redesigned archway doors. It just feels a little bit taller, a little bit more roomy. Again, we just feel a little bit smaller. For the most part, the angles are pretty much consistent. I thought it was interesting though that they've redesigned this here. So throwing nades into long are not as easy or as abusive anymore. I think you can still throw them between the building there, but I'm not sure how that looks from the other side or if it even passes through. It looks like it will. So it looks like you still have the ability to flashbang over that corner there, but the angle of throwing the nades are just a little bit constricted now. You have less space for throwing them, so you have to actually aim the nade a little bit better. Also, throwing nades from inside long doors has changed as well. It was very easy to just bank a nade out there into long from inside long doors here, but now on this new version you cannot bank the same way anymore, so you'd have to probably bank it through the door or directly over the ledge here. And I feel like the flashbangs are going to last a little bit less on the CTs because you're throwing these nades at a higher angle, so they're exploding at a higher angle, which I feel like is going to change how long CTs are actually blinded on long. I feel like they're going to be blinded for less time. I'm not sure, I haven't really experimented with a whole lot of that yet. This corner pretty much has stayed the same. Not much has changed here. I think it's a little unfortunate that now you can't actually shoot their feet through the bottom of this blue box. I used to play from CT side, I would play from inside pit, and normally you could actually peek the tiny little crevice that's below the box there, and you could actually hit them. But now with this new setup, it looks like that is not the case. That crack has been filled with void, so you will not be shooting their feet anymore if they're hiding directly behind there. And again, they did go ahead and remove these awkward, janky doorways with these awkward pillars. This is all just visual changes here. This crevice is probably, yeah, that's a new deal. So they added a little bit of a crevice here, but I don't see that really changing much at this point. Now, if you're inside pit, I thought this was interesting. So these are the big changes on pit. Obviously, this stairway is not in the same position anymore for the side of pit. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes gameplay. I haven't practiced with this area a whole lot, so I haven't seen much difference with it yet. But it'll be interesting to see. They also added a pole here on the pit here. So I actually like this pole because I feel like that adds some added coverage if you're playing CT side and you're trying to go for a shot as they're coming through the doorway. It gives you a little bit of coverage there from that blue box. Other than that, going down long, the rest of that looks pretty much the same. So they did change the positioning of the car that's outside B tunnels here. On the new one, they actually added this blue car, again with solid windows. So I guess if you're playing from right here, you get a little bit of coverage. You can see into tunnels there if CTs are rushing the tunnel. And the car is solid, so you're a little bit more hidden, a little bit more camouflaged. Other than that, everything else stays the same. They did get rid of this corner here. I thought this was interesting. So this double box corner is no longer here. I think that's a good change. That corner just didn't really seem very useful to me. They did redesign this whole entire corner here. They added this half wall, as well as just putting one box here instead of the 3 different stacks of boxes. So I guess this angle will be a little bit different. Not a huge deal though. I feel like maybe it's a little bit easier for counter terrorists to check this area if they're rushing outside tunnels here. It's a little bit easier to check this corner since there's just the one box, so this angle's a little bit more exposed. And again, they added stairways on this outside B tunnel ramp. To me, this is all just aesthetic changes, so nothing big there. One more change that I forgot to mention is the patio area. So that patio is now gone, or balcony. You can notice it's not there anymore, so you can't actually flash through it. I used to throw flashbangs right through the corner here, and it was great because it would blind them, and it was a very successful nade right over the balcony. Now that the balcony is gone, that is no longer the case. We'll have to get creative with how we throw the nades now to cover long doors. But nonetheless, I think that is it. Those are all the changes I can think of in a nutshell. In a very long descriptive nutshell, but those are the big changes to this map. So overall, a lot of it is aesthetic, but there are some angles and positions that have changed quite a bit because of the reconstruct. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Be sure to like, subscribe for more videos like this one. Again, I normally don't make videos like this, but I wanted to make this video more specifically because I've been a Counter-Strike player for over 10 years. So I've played it quite a bit that I wanted to do this coverage. It was a big deal for me. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace!